Slow down and watch how Edward Scissorhands responds to authority figures. You'll start recognizing a behavioral pattern. The quiet kid from the school who never spoke up. The cousin at family gatherings who sat in the corner. You've seen this before. Today we are examining authority response through Edward Scissorhands as a case study. Peg enters Edward's attic. A stranger, selling Avon. Edward is asking no questions.
I think you should just come home with me.
Watch his face. No evaluation occurs. No assessment of trustworthiness, no weighing of options. The inventor is dead. Peg speaks with directive authority. Edward transfers compliance from inventor to Peg. He follows her down the stairs, gets in the car, accepts what she's offering, accepts new clothes, accepts public exposure. Trust involves evaluation. This approach skips evaluation entirely. The first voice offering structure becomes the new authority. The transition takes seconds. Jim has no legitimate authority over Edward. He's dating Kim, nothing more. But Jim uses aggressive body language, escalates tone, invades personal space. So naturally, Edward complies.
Ed, what a guy. Good job. Yeah, you didn't break it or scratch it or anything. Maybe a pal and yell when Peg pulls in, huh?
Edward becomes Jim's lookout, while together with Kim they're making out. Later, Jim convinces Edward to break into his own house. Edward doesn't distinguish legitimate authority from brute dominance. If someone projects control, they have control. Aggression functions as sufficient authorization. Notice how Edward changes physically. He averts his eyes, reduces movement, yields space. After the arrest, watch the release scene. The psychologist and police officer discuss Edward. They explain his behavior, assign a meaning to his action, define what he is.
Be okay, Doc.
The years spent in isolation.
Edward stands silent. No interruption.
He's had no context. He's been completely without guidance. Furthermore, his work, the garden sculptures.
No objection, no correction. The years spent
Character. It seems clear that his awareness of what we call reality is radically underdeveloped.
in isolation have not given him the tools to judge right from wrong. When someone lacks stable internal identity markers, there is nothing to defend. For Edward, external authorities define himself. As an individual, he accepts these definitions without resistance. Edward's eyes bounce from the police officer to the doctor and back, never anchoring forward. Orientation stays entirely external. Without internal reference points, no position exists to argue from. Let's see what happens after Kevin gets hurt and the tension reaches the critical mass. Edward's behavior shifts. Starts withdrawing because complying is no longer an option. Arguments, explanations, and verbal defense is no longer viable. Next best thing for an omega is to retreat. When authority becomes contradictory, the compliance response collapses. At first, Edward backs away slowly. Then he is running. This isn't exactly escaping the situation as much as he is reducing the exposure to stimuli. He can't submit to incoherent authority. The only remaining option is removal from the situation entirely. Edward acts decisively exactly once in the film. Not when Joyce is trying to give him some. Not during arrest. Not when the mob chases him. When Kim is threatened, watch his posture shift. He straightens, initiates contact, becomes aggressive. But he's not defending himself, he's defending her. The activation threshold for defensive behavior is relational, not self-preservational. He won't fight for his own safety or dignity, he will fight for someone else's, who he's attached to. Self-preservation instinct remains absent. The protective response is other-directed. Edward exhibits authority dependence rather than authority resistance. He transfers compliance to the first directive voice. He responds to dominance cues regardless of legitimacy. He accepts external definitions of self. When authority fragments, he withdraws. He activates defensively only for others. If you've known someone like this, the person who never pushed back, who seemed to lack preference, who went along with everything just to get along, until suddenly they didn't. You weren't looking at weakness. You were most likely observing an omega response framework.